Good morning. The chalice lighters this morning are these two precious children who call me Yaya, and their father, my son-in-law Jeremy, who calls me Ann. If y'all would come forward, I'll tell you a little bit about them as they light the chalice. So Teddy is a 7-year-old first grader at Forest Heights STEM. He said he loves his mom because she's nice, kind, and that she's a very good mother. He also loves cuddling with her. Trudy is 3, and she attends preschool at Second Pres, and she says she loves it when her mom plays with her and gives her hugs. So Jeremy is an assistant professor of physics and astronomy at UCA, and he says that what impresses him most about my daughter Lauren is how dedicated she is to having Teddy and Trudy pursue the things that bring them joy and help them grow into well-rounded people. Okay, we have Teddy.
We kindle this flame with love for mothers and foremothers, past, present, and future. We kindle this flame in celebration of community and its generations. We kindle this flame with respect and support for the greater circle of life of which we are all part.
Thank you. Now, for our affirmation of covenant, please stand in body or spirit. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to see that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other.
I have another story of Nasruddin for you. Now, those of you who were here last week heard this preface before, but I'll repeat it for those who might not have been here last week. Nasruddin is thought to have been a real person as well as a character in Turkish folk tales. And if you go to the town of Akşehir in south central Turkey today, you can go, there's a park at the center of town, and in the center of that park, you will find Nasruddin's tomb. And in front of the tomb is a great big locked gate. But there is no fence around the tomb. This is thought to be a fitting symbol for Nasruddin, who was said by some to be very wise and by others very foolish. I'll let you decide when you hear the tale of Nasruddin and the soup of the soup. So, Nasruddin and his wife Fatima were at home one evening, and there's a knock at the door. And so he goes to answer the door, and there on his doorstep is his old friend from the next village, a fellow named Hussein. And Hussein has brought a fresh rabbit for dinner. He wasn't expected for dinner, but he's brought this rabbit. "Oh, what a fine rabbit," says Nasruddin. "I brought it just for you." He says, "Yeah, just for you, right? Okay." So he welcomes him in. They sit down, and Nasruddin gives the rabbit to Fatima, and she does what was expected in Akşehir at the time, which is when your husband has guests, you retire from the living room and get out of the way. And she goes back in the kitchen and prepares this rabbit with a pilaf and all kinds of wonderful food. And as they're talking, it takes her a long time to do this preparation. You know, it takes a while to cook something good, doesn't it? And so Nasruddin didn't mind. He likes to talk, and his friend Hussein was such a good friend because Hussein loved to listen. Hussein was the sort of fellow who knew just when to nod or cluck his tongue or lean in or whatever was expected of a good listener. And so they passed this time for quite a while. I don't know how long it took her to make that, but it took quite a while. And finally out comes this wonderful, and all the while they're talking, of course, the fragrance of this cooking food is filling the room. So they are very hungry when it comes out. And they both sit down, have this wonderful meal together. Yes, Fatima did get to sit and eat at the table, but so that was that night. Next night, we still have the bones left. Have I told you what a wonderful soup Fatima can make? He says to Hussein before he goes. Oh, her soups are as good as her pilafs. Hussein says good night. Next night, they're sitting at home, knock at the door. He goes to the door. Who are you? We are the neighbors of your friend Hussein. We heard what wonderful soup your wife makes from the bones of a rabbit, and we wanted to taste this soup. Well, he looks to see if they brought anything. Of course, their hands are empty, but he invites them in. Come. Hospitality is of high value in his life and in his culture there at the time. So he makes them welcome, and they wait. And Fatima, as she retires to the kitchen, he could hear her saying something which might have been, oh, how lovely to have guests again for a second night, or it might have been something very different that she said. And she was off there. It didn't take her quite as long to make the soup, but it took a while, and they talked and were very eager for this wonderful soup. They'd heard all about his guests were. And she finally comes out with the soup, and it is everything he said it would be. It was a delicious, delicious soup. And since he didn't know these folks very well, they didn't stay long after dinner, and off they went, and that was that. Third night, they're sitting at home, knock on the door. Who are you? We are the neighbors of Hussein, who brought you the rabbit 2 nights ago, and we've heard what a wonderful soup that your wife Fatima made from the bones of the rabbit. Oh, again, he sees their hands are empty. Well, come in. His hospitality is a little, threadbare. Third night. And he bids them sit down. I'll be right back, he says. He goes himself into the kitchen. He leaves Fatima out of this one. And he boils a kettle of hot water, and there's a couple of morsels of rabbit meat and a couple of vegetables of some kind, peas or carrots or something. They're just little bits of the leftover meal from the soup. And he puts those in 2 bowls and pours hot water over them and brings them out and sets them before these guests. And he says, oh, neighbors of the neighbors of Hussein, I hope you enjoyed the soup of the bones of the rabbit. And they didn't stay long. And next night, Nasruddin and Fatima sat down to dinner, and there was no knock at the door, and they had a nice, quiet dinner. So, do you think Nasruddin was wise? Do you think Nasruddin was foolish? Do you think Nasruddin's a little of both? So say we all. And
what a pleasure it is today to introduce my daughter, Lauren Ayn Lusk, this Mother's Day morning. She was a 5th grader when we moved to Little Rock, so this beloved community has had a big impact on her, as you can imagine. She is a lifelong UU. There are a few of us out there, and she was dedicated at the UU Church of Augusta, Georgia. She embraced the UU principles from an early age, and they have been at the core of her belief system essentially all of her life. Some of the programs and activities that she remembers as being particularly formative to her included OWL, Our Whole Lives, youth group pilgrimage to Boston, youth group rallies in Memphis and Plano, serving as president of the youth group, and receiving the Kiwanis C.R. Bates Spiritual Aims Award, thanks to James Thompson for nominating her. And she directed Stone Soup here at the church. Perfect tie-in with our story this morning, which no doubt helped to shape her career, as she is now an assistant professor of theater arts at Hendrix. Thank you for nourishing my daughter and nurturing her. She is who she is today in part because of you. With that, I give you my beautiful daughter, Lauren.
So thank you to my mother for that wonderful introduction. Good morning and happy Mother's Day to all of the mothers and matronly figures in this room and beyond. I'm gonna take a quick sip of water. So, a few months ago, Debbie Goolsby approached me, or more accurately, voluntold me, about speaking at church. And she asked me what I would like to speak about and when. To be honest, I first drew a blank, because I can't remember the last time I didn't speak about theater or teaching. So what else do I know about that someone would care to hear my opinion about? Then I started thinking about the multitude of names or titles I go by on any given day. For those of you who don't know, I'm also known as Teddy's mom, Trudy's mom, Mom, Mama, Mama Lusk, Mrs. Lusk, Professor Lusk, Lusk, Buggy, Bug, Honey, and Lauren. The majority of those names are referring to the fact that I am a mom. Now, to the two most wonderful kids you'll ever meet, but many would argue that I've always been a mom to everyone around me, even if begrudgingly so on their part. So of course, I thought that is what I should talk about, motherhood. And because I work full-time, I told Debbie that I would talk about being a working mom for Mother's Day. But the more I sat with that idea, I actually got sad, frustrated, and angry. Being a working mom, especially in our society, well, just stinks. I can never give 100% of my focus to being a mother or a wife or a professor or a scenic designer or a friend or to all the other things I try to juggle in my life. I am constantly torn, and I live in a state of guilt all the time. I'm sure most mothers here can empathize. Now, that doesn't feel like the empowering and celebratory message that I want to leave with you all on this special day where we are supposed to be celebrating moms. Make no mistake, I love being a mom. It is my favorite job, hands down. So, I decided I needed to change my angle. I did a little research about motherhood and our current American society to try to figure out why I feel this way and how we can show up for moms that will have a positive impact on everyone in our communities. So first, let's try to answer the question, why as a mom do I feel guilty all the time? This may seem like a loaded or difficult question, but I have found two answers. The American dream is toxic, and selflessness should not be celebrated. Let me explain. According to Mia Birdsong, in her book, How We Show Up, it all comes back to the American dream. In the first chapter, she says, by American dream standards, a good family is an insular nuclear family comprising a legally married man and woman raising biological children. This family is self-sufficient and as such functions as an independent unit. It's toxic individualism, but in family unit form. Mia Birdsong uses research and interviews with people from across the American spectrum in her book to highlight why this sense of individualism does not work to create a happy and functioning family that in turn creates a happy and functioning community. As humans, we crave a sense of belonging and support. We want help and we want to help, but the toxic individualism of the American dream is working against us. We have sayings in our society like, it takes a village. But how often do we feel comfortable asking and receiving that help, and to create our own villages instead of relying only on ourselves? Mia Birdsong says later in her book, the idea of asking for or accepting care is also an act of self-care many of us find challenging. And it is a recurring theme in almost every story in this book. The do-it-yourselfness of the American dream narrative has us refusing to ask for help, and often refusing to take it when offered because it's seen as shameful. Or when we need help, we think of it as a burden on others. But the lone wolf approach to life doesn't work for anyone because none of us is self-sufficient. Interdependence is part of who we are as people. We are fundamentally wired to need others. Of course, when I read that for the first time, all I could think about was the 7th UU principle. Respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. To me, that principle is saying that there is no singular person above another. We all should coexist in support of one another, supporting the whole community. Instead, our society has created a tiered system when it comes to this idea of the nuclear family, where moms are at the bottom. This is what Anna Maleka Tubbs passionately discusses in her 2021 Time magazine article, The Problem with Celebrating the Selflessness of Mothers. She begins the article by talking about how differently motherhood is supported around the world, even speaking of her own mother's experience of giving birth to children in different countries. Her mother said, if a mother is treated well in her community, that community will do well. In the article, Anna goes on to say, despite what I heard from her all my life, I was not fully prepared for how quickly I would be forgotten after birthing my own child. It is a feeling many mothers in the U.S. know well. All eyes seem to be on you while you're pregnant, sometimes in uncomfortable ways. But as soon as you give birth, all eyes turn to the baby. You've done the most epic and exhausting thing, yet you're no longer at the forefront of people's minds. In fact, the more you agree to be secondary, to put everyone's needs ahead of your own, to let your child shine while you sit in the background, the more you are congratulated. When I read this article on selflessness, it hit me like a ton of bricks. Being both a mom and a teacher makes the idea of celebrating selflessness a double blow. So to answer that first question of why do I feel guilty in my own terms? Well, I feel like I give space and time for everyone else, and I feel like a failure if I can't give them more than I do. Or if, heaven forbid, I take time for myself to pursue other things outside of motherhood and work that interest me, that feed my soul, that keep me healthy physically and emotionally, that make me a more well-rounded and content human. That is what our society makes me feel all the time. It's Mother's Day, where in our society we are gifted flowers and chocolates and macaroni necklaces and handprint art and brunch. And although I love those gifts and they should continue, they are just platitudes to cover up for things our society hasn't changed to truly make mothers' lives better, which, as Anna's mother said, will make the whole community better. Luckily, I feel that those closest to me make a valiant effort to try to help me to be my individual self as part of the whole, instead of the whole devouring me, even if at times I have a hard time accepting that help. So now the harder question. How can we show up for moms that will have a positive impact on everyone in our communities? I feel like this sort of help for mothers and parents in general is on a spectrum with 3 main points. On one end of the spectrum is the daily help from those in our immediate vicinity. These relationships are what Lawrence Barner II would call Zone 1. He describes Zone 1 as the people that I structure my life around. So as a mom, that would be grandparents, aunts and uncles, family friends, colleagues, and my kids. Examples of this Zone 1 help can be figuring out who's picking up the kids, who is watching the kids, who's helping with chores around the house, who's cooking dinner, who went grocery shopping so we have food for dinner, who can cover for me at work while I take a kid to the doctor, who remembered to wash the athletic uniform, who's taking the kids to their sports event, who packed the kids' lunches and snacks, who helped the kids with homework, who's giving the kids a bath and putting them down for bed. These are only some of the basic needs that many households with kids need help with on a just get through the day level. I feel fortunate as a mom that when we were able to move our family back to Arkansas nearly 6 years ago, it meant coming back to our hometown, where all of our parents are located, which helps us manage being a household with 2 full-time working parents, now made only harder because both of us work in a city we don't live in. But having grandparents to babysit only scratches the surface of the help that I need as a mother. So now to the middle point on the spectrum of help, which I think of as our surrounding community, what Barriner would call our zones 2 through 4 relationships. I'm proud that our UU Church takes strides to help on this level for parents. For example, the Fairy Godmothers on one Saturday of each month offer 4 hours of free babysitting, something that helps more than just one mother or a couple, but multitudes. Yes, those 4 hours could be a needed date night for parents. Or if you don't have a zone 1 level of free babysitter, it might be the only time you can conceivably get important stuff done for yourself or your kids without them in tow. Outside of this church family, the broader community still isn't as supportive of mothers as it needs to be, and a lot of that comes down to how businesses are run. For example, when we were living in Midland, Texas, before returning to Arkansas, we had a family membership to the Midland YMCA. It was a truly wonderful place. It had more than one indoor gymnasium, it had an indoor pool, a fitness center, but most importantly, it had childcare for kids from 6 weeks to 12 years old, all of which was included in our family membership at no extra cost. Now, there were a few other gyms in Midland, mostly CrossFit places, but none with the community and family atmosphere of the Y. You could be a new mom trying to get your body fit in postpartum, go work out, be able to exercise, breastfeed your baby if needed, and then go back upstairs and continue exercising. What a great way to help mothers stay physically active. Not only that, what if both parents need to exercise at the same time of day due to their schedules, but live in a town without family who don't have access to free babysitting every day they want to go to the gym? So imagine my shock when we moved back to Little Rock as parents to find that not a single fitness place in town has childcare that is included in a family membership. If childcare is an option at a gym, that is an extra fee for each child, and the cost can increase depending on how long they are in the childcare. Most gyms that actually offer this extra childcare are already very expensive. So how are we helping moms of every economic status stay active, as we are reminded constantly by doctors and every fad diet out there to do? I mean, what would happen if places of entertainment or shopping actually offered on-the-spot childcare so that moms could have some moments of peace while relaxing or doing the family shopping? I mean, IKEA, a Swedish company, has childcare so that your kids can have fun while you shop instead of letting them go crazy and drive you crazy in the store while you're trying to make a decision about furniture or plates. This is a win-win scenario that other countries like Sweden have figured out. Mia Birdsong said, "I can better support the people in my life if my own well-being is tended to. I am a better parent, partner, and friend when I engage in regular emotional hygiene, and I'm not leaking all over the people around me. I can be more present for my community when I am well rested and caring for my body. When I get sloppy about sleep, exercise, nutrition, relaxation, and any number of things that support my physical and emotional well-being, I'm not as kind, patient, or available to my loved ones. That means I have to show up for myself first." This leads us to the third point on the spectrum, the Zone 5 relationships, people you don't know. If we are a part of an interdependent web, it means that every mother matters, not just the ones you know. And if we take care of them, then they take care of themselves, and then all of us, like Mia Birdsong said. Now we are thinking on a national scale. How do we support mothers at this level? You help support them with your voice, your activism. For example, support a better Family Medical Leave Act, one in which mothers can take 12 or more weeks off while still being paid without eating up all of their sick days in the process. For example, when I had my daughter, I was teaching in the Little Rock School District, which falls under the current American Federal Medical Leave Act. Trudy was born in early July when I was off contract, but I wanted 12 weeks with her postpartum, which meant that I used my 10 sick days in August so that I could be paid, plus another 2 weeks of FMLA days with no pay after that in September. But then I had to go back because I couldn't afford to use any more of my unpaid FMLA days to be out longer. Unfortunately, it meant that I had used up my paid sick days. So if anything drastic had happened to me or my kids for the rest of the school year, which at that point was nearly the entire year left, I had no sick days left to use. I am really good at my job, but life happens. Kids get sick, and they need someone to care for them. So why aren't we supporting working mothers while they are raising the next generation? We need their skillful labor and knowledge in the workforce. So why aren't we doing everything we can to retain them? Another idea, short-term disability insurance is something that you can pay into at a job to help cover your paycheck when you're out for medical reasons, giving birth being one of them. If I am considered disabled when I am in postpartum, why are businesses not mandated to have things like nursing or lactation rooms, just like they are ramps and handicap parking? There was no such place in my school when I had Trudy. I was fortunate that I was the sole adult to work in an auditorium, so I had a private office, which also served as the box office. Other teachers who don't have personal offices are left to either ask someone else to borrow theirs or to use a restroom. How second-class citizen is that? I say all this, not trying to bring you down this Mother's Day. Like I said in the beginning, I want to leave you with something empowering, something uplifting as we celebrate moms. If we as UUs truly believe in our principles, including the first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person, then I ask you, what have you done for your mom or a mom lately? You don't have to start at the third point in the spectrum, but acknowledge that there are problems there. Today, just start with how you can show up for the moms you know in your life. Showing up for moms could be grandparents or lots of parents banding together to host alternating sleepovers so that parents and especially moms can get a mental break. It could be a colleague who takes a task off your plate when you are overwhelmed. It could be a spouse who puts their arm around you when you just need to cry. It could be friends grabbing margaritas together. It could be someone watching the kids while you go on a run by the river. It could be a child chipping in around the house without being asked. It could be your dog wanting to cuddle with you after a long day at work. Or it could be your best friend driving 10 hours to be there for you as you give birth to your firstborn because you don't have a motherly figure there. These are all examples of what you can do to support mothers daily in big and small ways. I promise you, the small ways are just as important as the big. Remember, when we show up for moms, they can truly show up for us as their best selves, and not as the overworked, selfless martyrs they can become. I don't know about you, but when I look around this room at all of the amazing mothers here, I swell with pride. And I want nothing but the best for them. So go forth this Mother's Day and show the mothers in your life how you support them by just showing up. Happy Mother's Day.
Very well done. Thank you so much.
Today, our closing words will be our benediction. Go out into the world in peace. Have courage. Hold on to what is good. Return to no person evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the suffering. And honor all beings.